Welcome to the San Francisco Dance Film Festival's discussion of an exceptional and historically significant feature, Firestarter, the Story of Bangarra. Bangarra Dance Theatre is a First Nations dance company based in Sydney, Australia, but touring nationally and internationally. My name is Michelle Potter, and I'd like to introduce shortly the wonderful speakers that we have. But I'm speaking to you from Canberra, Australia, on Ngunnawal country, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and work. Now, to introduce our guests, first, please meet Frances Rings. Frances is currently Associate Artistic Director of Bangarra and has danced with the company over a long period. She has also choreographed some of Bangarra's most significant works. Welcome, Frances.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Likewise. Next, I'd like you to meet Wayne Blair. Wayne is a co-director of Firestarter and as a film director has an impressive list of credits to his name, many of which address Indigenous issues. Wayne has also performed with Bangarra, notably in a production called Skin. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you.
Now, please meet Nel Minchin. Nel is also a co-director of Firestarter and also has an impressive list of credits to her name, having worked in both film and television. Welcome, Nel.
Hi.
Now, I'd like to put the first question to Fran. Fran, this film covers a wide range of subjects and issues and covers those subjects in an exceptional fashion. Could you give us an idea, a brief kind of introduction perhaps, as to what you think is the main theme, or perhaps it's even themes given the variety of material of this particular film?
Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge that I am currently on Guringai land. This is north of the Hawkesbury, the Diribin, the Sacred River, and just south of Darkinyoung land. So I am a Gulgitha woman. I'm from the west coast of South Australia, and yeah, my association with Bangarra has been extensive. It's been a long, enriching, very life-changing experience. I think it's made me the person who I am. Your question about some of the themes, I guess, you know, for me, the film really, it's about survival, it's about resilience, and it's about overcoming adversity. These are themes that Indigenous people are really familiar with. They have carried the blanket of grief since colonisation. They you know, have to reconcile with that every day, and with each generation that comes through, there's a new way of dealing with it. There's a new set of tools that generation look to. We were really fortunate that Bangarra came at a time that the arts was so vibrant, especially Indigenous arts. And we were able to access that as a way to tell our stories and the way to create the medicine that we needed to inspire our people and inspire our mobs in communities to, you know, to reclaim their culture, to speak their languages, to be proud of their identity. So yeah, resilience, survival, you know, it's a powerful story. And you know, I think we are very familiar with that, Indigenous people all over the globe. Yeah.
I'd like to ask Nel now how you became involved in co-directing Firestarter. I was also wondering whether you had working connections with Bangarra previously.
I didn't previously work with Bangarra at all. I have worked in the kind of theatre filmmaking space for a while, so with Sydney Theatre Company, which is positioned just near Bangarra in the space, and came across Stephen, and in the same year as the dance feature Spear was released, and Stephen Page had directed that. So I'd seen this beautiful dance feature that I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was such an incredible piece of film. And then saw Stephen speak somewhere and realized what an amazing character he clearly was. But I didn't know him at all. I didn't know Fran at all. I didn't know anyone at all. So I just spoke to Stephen one day over lunch and said, I'd be really interested in telling your story. And we realized the 30, not telling a story, but kind of exploring it, the 30 years was coming up for Bangarra. So there was sort of an anniversary element to it. And then very quickly, Wayne and I joined forces and developed this documentary out of it. So that was about 4 years ago now. So yeah.
Wayne, on the other hand, you have worked with Bangarra before. Would you care to tell us a little bit about that engagement with them and about how you became involved with Firestarter?
So the year was 1999. I was in a show, a Sydney theatre company, Queensland theatre company show called The Sunshine Club, which was a musical. And it was a musical theatre show. And Stephen Page was the choreographer of that show. Wesley Enoch was the director. Stephen and I had met each other, knew that we were family related. And Stephen said he's got this show called Skin for the year 2000. It's a part of the Olympic Arts Festival. And Bangarra was a company that, not just growing up in Queensland and Rockhampton, where I am now, Mum's Golf Club, I went, oh, Bangarra, they were sort of a company, an Indigenous company that I was just so proud of, and would see and go, I'm Indigenous, that company's Indigenous, I want to do everything that company's involved in. So Stephen, I was fortunate enough to be involved with Stephen in the show, and then he asked me to be in that show. And then we rehearsed all the way through 2000 in a show called Skin. I was in the second half called Spear. So that was that show. And I've been invited back to the company to do some voiceover as a voiceover artist, but also just to be involved as an artist nonetheless, and just be involved in workshops or, just things with Stephen and the company. So, and have worked with Stephen Page and David Page and Russell Page outside of the company at that time as well. That's where I've Nel and Ivan, Nel being the co-director and Ivan the producer of it, both came to me and said, that we've got an in with this Bangarra documentary about Bangarra Dance Theatre, and that we'd like you to be a part of it. What do you think? And this is my first documentary that I'm involved in, and I thought, just as another thing. So that was in 2000, I suppose. When they asked me, it was 2017, 2018 now, if I can remember correctly. So 17 years later, I sort of put my hand up again to be involved. So that was it. Yeah, so simple, a couple of simple questions in the right place at the right time, and then sort of went forth with 100% energy and commitment.
Great. I'm kind of interested in how you and Nel co-directed the film. Did you divide up the tasks in any way? I want to ask both Nel and Wayne this question about the co-direction. So,
if I can, I don't think we sort of wrote it out on paper as such. It was a little bit more organic, but if you were to look back, if you were to ask this question in an interview or a Zoom of sorts, you'd have to sort of say that, you do, because if one person's doing one sort of job, the other person, you don't want to double up, otherwise your energy is too much, so you sort of share the duties, I suppose. But it was a really organic process to a certain degree. And then I think we sort of knew where our skills lied best or something, or just sort of went, I can do that more easier or something. But Nel, what do you think?
Yeah,
I think it was, as Wayne said, organic. I think we came from kind of different disciplines and different perspectives. So I think it was quite clear what position each person, or what we could both bring. But what we did do, I think, which is probably unusual when I talk to other people who've co-directed, is Wayne and I sat and interviewed everyone pretty much as a pair. Most of the interviews we were a partnership on, and again, that was quite an organic flowing process. Some things it was simpler for me to ask, some things it was simpler for Wayne to ask, and often we'd kind of just, you know, touch each other on the shoulder and kind of go forth with our question and come back. So I think that was kind of interesting. And then again in the edit, it was the same. We sort of sat side by side quite a lot. So even though neither of us had ever met each other before, we come from quite different disciplines of filmmaking and all that kind of stuff, and different areas. I think it was actually surprisingly easy to kind of make that work. Yeah.
So that worked to our favour and not to our favour. And some people that maybe were more familiar with me, I would sort of lead into the conversation, and Nel would join, and then you'd swap over the percentage of who was asking the questions. And then in a certain interview, Nel would do it 100%. And the one question I would ask would be something that they were not expecting, and that maybe Nel wasn't expecting, that would open up a more of an array of questions. So unknowingly, it sort of shaped it really well, I think. You know, to try to do it again, you'd probably go, oh, I love this team that we've got. Maybe it wouldn't work as well for the project or for the two people that were doing it. For the contest, say, I think as you get along in life and as you tell stories and try to, you know, tell good stories and share them with the world, I think that sort of challenging the status quo is really healthy. And I think, you know, you sort of, if you look at it like a negative thing, it doesn't work, because you need that. You actually need the story. You need to go through some hard stuff or to get to the really good stuff, to what the actual story is about. And that comes through, you know, just being around someone and being very honest and open with that person, or your editor, or your producer, or and then you can shift that onto the people that you're about to talk with, because all that stuff, all that hard work you do is a really good platform in post-production. And when you talk about the story as well, you come from it from a really truthful place, and you've done everything in your power, or everything that's available to you, to do it in the right way. And I think if that comes with a little bit of you know, something that's hard, I think that's really, really healthy. And invariably, you know, as an individual, you grow more. So yeah, and then you just go, you know what, we're a good team, you know, and everyone's winning grand finals and back slaps, but you got to be when you're not winning grand finals, and when in the back slappers, you can see who's coming out. And that's when your teammates there for you, you know. And that's what Nel and I were.
Fran, I'd like to ask you a little bit about the collaboration too, because I'm interested in the extent to which the Bangarra family, I mean the wider family, the Bangarra community, I suppose, was involved in setting the direction in a certain way, or not.
The thing is that we speak about truth-telling every day for, you know, non-Indigenous people. And as Indigenous people, we also need to look in the mirror and truth tell our own experiences. And as difficult as that is, you know, I think it's really healthy. It makes you deal with stuff. And I think the company really needed to look inwards and be able to, you know, reflect and you know, it's easy to push grief down or to push trauma down and not to deal with it. And I think one of the outcomes of Firestarter was putting those things in the public space and not hiding from it. I don't think I would have had, I think I opened up probably, you know, more to Wayne because, you know, I'd worked with him. He's a brother, and you know, you have a different relationship, and he's also an artist. So I knew as a storyteller, he understood my experience and he understood, you know, what I was talking about. So I felt really, really safe. And Nel was just so warm and generous. And I think they both kind of created this really amazing dynamic that, you know, you just felt that it was safe. Yeah.
I think you had to deal with some quite emotional issues too. I imagine that would have been particularly difficult at times.
It was probably a really cathartic, really important thing to do, because if I was feeling this way, then how were all the other alumni? How was Stephen feeling? How was, you know, the other people who knew both Russell and David. And, you know, we're not good at talking about, we're good at telling other people's stories, but I don't think we were good at telling our own and sharing that story. And I think there's something that we can now, it kind of felt like it was a rebirth in a lot of ways for us. Yeah.
I'll just change the topic ever so slightly and go to Wayne and Nell, because having worked for a while in the National Film and Sound Archive, I was very interested in thinking about the kind of film and video footage you had to use, because what we see in the film starts around about the 1960s and then goes all the way through to the present. So Nell and Wayne, did you have to restore any of that film?
Our editor, one of our editor, Nick Myers, we had two great editors, Karen Johnson and Nick Myers, but he was very brilliant at kind of making sure we were getting the final, the best version. And so that took quite a lot of searching. I know that was kind of where Ivan was doing a lot of that on our behalf, but from our sort of at that very late stage. But from our point of view, what we did do, there was a couple of really key archival pieces we searched for and found. One of them was a documentary that was made in the late 90s about the three boys, Urban Clan, and the producer had happily, and that was directed by Michelle Ma, and it was a dance film as well. And the producer had happily kept all the original tapes, all the rushes. And it was in a shed in the Blue Mountains. He had to go and, you know, find it for us. And so that was like a real treasure hunt, but it ended up, it was shot beautifully on these Betacams and stuff. And we did have to digitize all that. And that was fantastic. So that was all those sort of big original interviews with the brothers and a lot of that 90s footage. And then there was also this incredible Super 8 footage from the 60s from the Page family. And yeah, news archive and stuff like that. But I don't think we weren't remastering it particularly, but there were a few that we had to go and find the original quality, basically. Yeah. Yeah, that was a massive treasure hunt. And again, like not something we knew we had access to, all of that archive, all that personal archive, until we started digging. And then we realized how much of that historical story we could tell kind of almost in real time or, you know, within the timeline. So that was really fantastic.
Yeah, and the early footage of the Page family is absolutely fascinating when you look at it. Those little boys and girls are just incredible. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Fran, viewers of the film will hear early on that Bangarra actually means to make fire. And I'm quite interested, given that there's a very strong political message that comes through. Was Bangarra out to start a fire with this film?
Whatever we do, I think we start a fire.
Well, that's the name, isn't it? Yeah.
You know, whatever platform they're on, you know, we shouldn't be telling our stories. We shouldn't be here. You know, that's the thing, is that, you know, our stories are inspired by this diversity of cultures and people that survived genocide and colonization. And whatever we do, whatever message, it's political, it's always, you know, reflective of overcoming these, you know, incredible policies and, you know, experiences that were created, you know, for us not to be here. Yeah, you know, we're that resilience always hasn't been there. I think, you know, seeing that amazing footage from the 90s and from, you know, you hear Stephen speak about it during the Olympics and about, you know, how much pressure he had from his own communities about, you know, not boycotting the Olympics, but, you know, as an artist, your platform and your, you know, if you're given a global platform to tell the story of survival, why would you not take that? And he knew that. And, you know, that's the thing, you know, a visionary looks to what's ahead and the bigger picture. You know, they're not looking short-sighted. It's always about, you know, where we're traveling to. And I think that he's always had that about Bangarra. And that's why it's been, you know, alive, and why it continues to, you know, to create change and, you know, shift the social consciousness of who we are as Indigenous people. Yeah.
You mentioned the Olympics, and I think that particular section of the film is really quite startling when you look at it. And I noticed that Wesley Enoch was the director of the Indigenous component, I think. Is that a reason for bringing Wesley? I mean, perhaps this is a question for Wayne and Nel as well. Is that how Wesley came to be invited to be in the show?
I don't think so. No, Wesley's sort of like a big sort of is a sort of important member of our artistic community in Australia, I think, you know. He went to QT in Brisbane and he started an Indigenous theatre company called Kawemba Jadara way back in the mid-90s. And so being an artistic director of an Indigenous theatre company back then, and just being who Wesley is. And Wesley had some, as I said, you know, connections with Bangarra and, of course, the Page family. They're all from Queensland. Stradbroke Island and Bow Desert are very close to each other. So, yeah, I think, just because Wesley's a bit of a juggernaut in Australian sort of theatre world and industry, that's the main reason why. And, of course, being a part of the Olympics was just an extra little bit of information that happened. But, no, just Wesley's, because Wesley's sort of good for us.
Yeah, and he speaks very well too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
A very strong speaker in the film, I think. I was interested in Hetty Perkins too. How did she come to be involved?
I think having that commentator kind of role was what, with both Hetty and Wesley, was, yes, they're connected to the story, but they're that little bit further away. And it just means that you can kind of have that conversation about the broader context as well. So that was really, I think, why both of those people were so valuable in the film.
I think one of my favourite parts in the whole film is at the very end, where there is this great hope for the future, and it comes through with Stephen and his son Hunter, and Stephen being grandfather to this little baby. It's just gorgeous. But also there are younger dancers, one of whose name I think is Callum Goolagong, is that right? And he actually speaks his language on the film. So there is that great hope, I think, for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the inspirational stories every day. I saw the other day on ABC, there's a Tiwi girl who's creating, you know, her own anime, and it's all using Tiwi language. And I was like, wow, that is just, it's mind-blowing, you know, what our young people are doing in every industry, in every sector. And, you know, when, you know, I was young, I think, you know, I looked up to Michael Jackson. I think I say that on the documentary. But, you know, what's incredibly inspiring these days is that you can turn on the TV and watch mainstream television and they're acknowledging what land they're on. Whoa, like, you know, that's just mind-blowing. So all those little incremental shifts, we look to go, as Indigenous people, we want to go forward. But in order for us to go forward, we need to tell our stories of the past. You know, I don't think you can deny or, you know, say that you didn't know that part of our history. Those excuses are, you know, they're not acceptable anymore. It's your responsibility to know what land you're on, you know, what's the language group, you know, get connected with your community, understand, you know, the history of your area. You know, this is a real commitment. And I think that those shifts, I'm excited for my children that they're growing into a world that, you know, I never had as a child. And I think that, you know, that's something that is really powerful for our whole nation.
Well, I always get annoyed when people say, oh, I didn't learn about that at school and I don't know anything about that. And I always think to myself, well, why don't you go and watch Bangarra for God's sake, because they're telling it all the time. So anyway, thank you. That was lovely. I've told you what one of my favorite pieces in the film is, and that's the hope for the future at the end. I was wondering if I could ask you for favorite moments in the film.
One is the Olympics, because we were so exhausted. We were doing skin, we were doing the Olympics. We had no days off. When we weren't rehearsing, we were out at Western Sydney on an old airstrip rehearsing in the cold. And but that iconic moment of being in the stadium and seeing the Wandjina rise, I don't think nothing could have prepared us or anybody else in that stadium for the collective gasp that came from everyone when this Wandjina spirit figure rose out of the ground. And it just felt like, you know, we were reclaiming our country.
Nel, do you have something to say on this question?
Oh, it's so hard. I love this film. I feel really, you know, we had quite a long time to make it, and COVID sort of meant that things got shifted, and even the edit process was a bit longer than we expected. And as a result, I think the space that was around it meant that it kind of just percolated and found its own feet. And there's lots of, you know, being in an edit suite, there's lots of things that you just really work towards. And so when they work, you know, it's just, you know, magic. There was a really amazing moment actually when one of the earliest moments in the film, we've got the Temptations as the soundtrack, and there's a moment where Sylvia Blanco's doing a solo, and it's kind of intercut with the kind of politics of the time. And I think that was a real magic moment by our editor, who sort of said, hey, have a look at this. And we were just like, wow, amazing, you know. And that was kind of the first time we really felt like we can see, like, this is where this dance, the kind of viscerality, I don't know if that's a word, viscerality of dance, that was a really amazing moment. But for me, the experience of making it has been a really big learning curve in lots of ways, and definitely from a kind of way of looking at our country and way of looking at the world way. Elmer Chris saying we were really nervous in the Olympics, but we had to this is what our ancestors want, and we needed to go out, and then we see the Torres Strait Island dance. I think that's a really incredible moment, and again one that I just probably hadn't seen the world like that before I started interviewing these people. So that was really brilliant. But I remember someone, a director once telling me that if you've got, you know, if you can find one moment that you absolutely love, then you've got to be happy with your film. And I love lots of moments in this film. So yeah.
Wayne, do you have thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I just agree with all that. I mean, I enjoyed the film and all the moments there. And I really loved the Commonwealth Games protest moments, all the footage we found from there. And that was great, I think, because it's Queensland, it's Brisbane, it's, you know, it was right in the heart of Brisbane. So people chose not to see it, or, you know, we just showed people again. So just to remind what, you know, that adversity one goes through and that continuous struggle and fight. But half my family in those photos too. So it was great, you know, it made you smile.
I'd like to thank you, the three of you, Fran, Nel and Wayne, for appearing on this session. And it's been a huge pleasure and privilege for me to talk to you. And I hope the people who are watching this will tell their families and their friends about it and will enjoy it as much as you have making it. Thank you very much.